Hello you guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here, you're watching BookedonCharity, and in today's video we'll be going through my October read. But as you guys know, I always start these videos with a quick wrap up of my stats. So in the month of October I read a total of 8 books, and from those 8 books I managed to read 2,502 pages and listen to 24.85 hours of audiobook. The books that I read covered multiple genres, and from those 8 books, 3 of them that I read were thrillers, 3 was fantasy, 2 were YA, 2 were science fiction, 2 were romance, 2 were graphic novels, 1 was dystopian, 1 had LGBTQIA+ representation, 1 was a mystery, and 1 was a horror, which might be surprising, but we'll talk about it. 38% of my reads were audio and 63% was in print format, which is a good ratio. The moods that I read in this month were dark, tense, lightheaded, funny, mysterious, adventurous, hopeful, and emotional. Dark and mysterious I feel like are always at the top of my list because I read a lot of fantasy and I read a lot of mystery and sci-fi as well. So dark and tense and mysterious is always there. And then finally, my average star rating for the month was 4.25 stars, which I think was a great reading month to that sense. And 3 of the books that I read I gave 5 stars. 3 I gave 3.75 stars, and 1 I gave 3.5 stars. So without wasting any more time, let's get into the actual books. So I'm going to talk about the books in the order that I finished them. And the first book I finished was Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. I gave this book 5 stars because I really enjoy it. And this book follows 2 main characters. Firstly, we've got Camilla, who is a painter and a woman, obviously, in a century where women were not really meant to work or own businesses, but she owned her own gallery and she made money from painting, and her dad left her an inheritance and she essentially lived alone, which is something that you don't get to see in this era. And because of that, there are men in the community that cannot accept her and her freedom, and you get glimpses of men trying to impose their dominance over her, and I love how she carried herself throughout. And then we also follow one of the 7 princes of hell, and he goes by the name of Envy, so that is his power as well. And Envy's story is that his kingdom, or his circle of hell that he rules over, something has happened to that place. The people, I don't want to say people, but the demons, the beings that live in this space have been taken over by a curse, and therefore he goes and joins this competition which would allow him to win something that will essentially help his kingdom. So he goes into this competition, and while he is going about solving all these clues and things to this competition, it leads her to meet Camilla. And part of that competition is that Camilla needs to commission a painting for him of something very specific. But the issue is that if Camilla paints a painting of a cursed object, that cursed object can actually come to life. So she's very, not even reluctant, she doesn't want to do it. And we go through this journey where he's trying to like convince her to do it because he has his own reasons for it. And as we keep going through the story, you also start learning that there's something more to Camilla. Like there's something about her that's just not human. And we go through the story trying to figure it out. You find out in the end, and I was just blown. I was not ready for that. I think I probably assumed something else, but it's not what I expected her to be. But the journey through that, it's so enjoyable to read. Like we go through the underworld, we pass through different realms, and like going through this competition and getting to know Envy and Camilla a bit more. And this is a fantasy romance, and we don't really get the romance almost like towards the end, but the angst right from the beginning, it's just so tangible and it's so good that you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for the day that these two people actually get together. But I love the banter in here. I love the politics of it, because there's a lot of politics, seeing that we've got Envy, who is, you know, one of the princes of hell, and he's got his brothers, and there's this power shift that's happening between different realms. So yeah, it's like there's a lot going on in here, but I really enjoyed every bit of me reading this book. I also paired this with the audiobook from Audible, and yeah, I'm very happy. This book was gifted to me by the people at Jonathan Ball Publishers, so thank you so much for this copy. And it's definitely a must read for anybody who enjoys fantasy romance, enjoys a little bit of a slow burn but good banter, and like when the steam comes, it comes, okay? But there's a lot of bantering, there's a lot of angst that's just makes you anticipate this romantic element that comes about. But I like my fantasy romance to kind of like take a step back to the fantasy. So I love my fantasy romances to be more fantasy focused and have the romance kind of be at the background, and this book is definitely it. So I really loved it. Also really enjoyed the writing style from Carrie Maniscalco. She is known to have like very purple prose and like beautiful writing, and I really got that from this book, so I really enjoyed it. Also very beautiful cover, and one thing that I love is that throughout the book there's some illustrations at the top of some of the pages, and I love seeing things like that. I love looking at things like that. So yeah, it's very interesting, and there's a mystery element to the story as well, because Camilla's mom disappeared from her house and left the husband, and we don't know why. We don't know if she's even alive, but we see that the father, ever since the mother disappeared, he also kind of like lost his footing a little bit and started getting very obsessed with looking for a key to travel through to other realms. And in your head you get the sense of, is that where he thinks the mom went? So we don't know. Oh, I know, but you guys don't know if you haven't read the book yet. But I found that very interesting as well. So that whole mystery element, I really enjoyed it. But yeah, this was a great one. 5 stars. Definitely must read, and I can't wait to read the second book, which I've already put on hold from my Libby. So as soon as it comes in, I am delving back to the story. The next book I read, I will put a picture up here, is called The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. This is a mystery thriller, and I gave this one 3.75 stars. Let me just say that first. And we following a main character who is single, and the story starts off with her going on a date with this guy. But as the day goes on, she realizes this guy is kind of creepy and saying all these things, and she's just like, this date is not going well. And as she tries to go home, he tries to follow her, and she kind of leads him to the wrong place, but it ends up kind of like in a physical altercation where another guy comes and steps in to kind of like save her. And so she's just like, you know what, this was the worst date ever. But she gets home, she tells, you know, her friend, I just had this worst date, this is what happened. And her friend who lives in the same in the same building as her, essentially her neighbor, says, you know, I just got off on a date as well with somebody who I've been seeing for the last year, and I think, you know, there's a potential for a real thing, and you just missed him, you know. So they make a plan to meet up, but then the next day something happens, and it starts leading her on this journey to try and figure out what the heck happened and who could be responsible. But at the same time, we get another perspective, and this is mainly happening like a couple of years back, and we're following a male character who we are going through his life, and we start to see kind of like a pattern of him being very obsessed with like blood and seeing people cut, and he has this like obsessive personality. And as you keep going back to find out his story, in the current timeline where this female main character is, you're trying to figure out who of the men that have been introduced in this current timeline is actually our guy from back in the day. So I love the way that the stories kind of like move towards each other at some point. And I found myself questioning and accusing every single man that came up on this story. And I was just like, one of them has, like, I'm convinced that one of these men is this guy. And as we keep going with the story and things are starting to unfold and the side things are unfolding, you're just like, is this the same pattern? What is going on? So that can be like very, very intrigued. I did enjoy it. I gave it 3.75 stars because I don't think it was as good as The Housemaid. I feel like that book kept me on my toes, but this one was also still very enjoyable. Like the plot twist in the end, I did not expect it. I did not expect the culprit to be the person that it ended up being, and I was just like, this person was not even on my radar. They were not even on my radar. But yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy Frida McFadden's work. Like, it's very easy to consume, very quick, and I just needed something very quick and easy to read at the time. So yeah, I definitely did enjoy reading that. But I couldn't give it a higher star rating than 3.75. I felt like there were some things that maybe could have been done better, and especially with one of the characters, I feel like we didn't get enough history on why is this person like this, and especially them being introduced into the story. I felt like there was some missing pieces that I needed to put this whole thing together. But yeah, otherwise it was a good read. And then I read a graphic novel by Lee Bardugo called Demon in the Wood. So this is a Shadow and Bone graphic novel, or the Grishaverse 0.1. So I'm guessing that there's going to be more graphic novels. And in this graphic novel, we follow the story of the Dark One, but as a teenager. And we follow him moving from like town to town with his mom because there's specific magical abilities. People are very scared of it, and they kind of like keep their distance from these people, and they're essentially just trying to find a safe place to live and settle in. But it seems like everywhere that they've traveled, people have like looked badly on them, and every time their powers kind of like show, their lives start becoming endangered, so they have to leave. And this time around they thought, you know what, we can find a place we can settle until things go awry and an incident happens. It's a graphic novel. It's a very short story, so I can't really say a lot about it, but I gave this one 3.75 stars as well because I felt like this was just an introduction to probably what's gonna come up next. I think maybe in the next couple of volumes we'll get a bit more of the story, and I could maybe have more of a plot and something to build towards. But for now, I think it was a good entry, but I feel like I needed more. I actually wish that I had volume 2 already. It would have probably just jumped straight into it to see where they would end up, because at the end they needed to leave again because something happened. But yeah, gave that one 3.75 stars. The next book I read was The Secrets of Us by Lucinda Berry, and this one I realized that I had not even rated it on my story graph, but I just rated it now and gave it 3 stars. So this is a psychological mystery thriller, and we're following 2 sisters, Crystal and Nicole, who seem to have a good life right now. But one day, Crystal, who became a lawyer, gets a phone call that something happened. Your sister's husband has been hospitalized because there's been a fire at the house. And when she's trying to find out how's my sister, how's Nicole, is like, Nicole is not with him, but she is currently in a mental institution. And she's like, what is my sister doing in a mental institution? And then she finds out that allegedly the sister is the one who started the fire, and when the paramedics and the firefighters came to the house to try and get the husband out of the house, she fought like against them doing that. And there's video footage of her kind of like dancing in front of the yard as the house burned. So we going through the story. So this is not like a mystery in the sense of who did it, but it's more of answering the question of why was it done. And I think, I feel like I gave it like 3.5 star rating. Let's give it 3.5 star rating, okay? So as you go through, like, it takes you through on this journey of how these two sisters grew up, and you find out they were foster kids and being bounced around from like family to family until they ended up with this family. And you see the kind of lives that they were living. Like, they experienced like a lot of abuse and some trauma, and we start to build on what these things that they've experienced have brought on to their lives. Sorry, my lighting changed because the sun is gone now. But I think I like not knowing who did it and then trying to figure out who did it. I think the idea of knowing who did it, but then, and being sure of who did it. I think there's a difference between somebody being accused of something and we are trying to prove that it's not them, but then having to see that this person did do it and now having to go through the why wasn't as intriguing for me, which I think that's probably the reason why I ended up at a 3.5 star rating. So there was nothing almost like to anticipate. I was just trying to get the story to unfold, to try and see what could put Nicole to such a mental state, to a point where she literally loses it and becomes this different person. So it talks a lot about like mental health and trauma. So that's what we see a lot of in the book. It was one that I think it was okay. I think it was a nice quick read. I did listen to this via audio, so it was a quick read for me. But yeah, I think at some point I just wanted to kind of like finish up the story and didn't really feel the pull to kind of like solve the mystery as much. But yeah, I gave this one 3.5 star rating. The next book I read is called The Girl from the Sea by Molly Knox Ostertag, and I gave this one 3.75 stars. This is a graphic novel and it's a YA, and it features sapphic romance. So this one is like a story of first love, finding yourself, you know, understanding a little bit of your sexuality, because our main character is starting to feel a little bit different, but she hasn't really come out to anyone. And she meets this girl from the sea who this girl keeps telling her that she's a Selkie, and she's like, no, you're not a Selkie, you're human, you're just wearing the skin. And it takes her a bit of time to like accept it, but you see that she struggles to come out to her friends and her family because she feels a little bit odd. They've known her to be a certain type of way all her life, and now she's changing and she doesn't really like know who to turn to. So this new girl that she meets end up being kind of like a friend to her, but at the same time she finds her a little bit awkward because she's like, why do you walk around not having shoes? Why don't you understand like clothing, you know, things like that. But I like the friendship and the relationship that forms there. I like that she finds a way to have somebody to like support her and encourage her. And it's a story of family as well. You know, we've got a family where her parents are divorced and her mom is like sad, and she's got a little brother who's being a little bit hard on the mom because he's also having a hard time. So we see a little bit of that family dynamic, but I really liked it. I think the illustrations were really cute, very pretty to look at, and the story also very quick to consume, and it was just a nice little fluffy read. And yeah, I enjoyed it. The next book I read, and I'm already smiling, that's when you know it was a good one. It was one of my 5-star reads, and that is Dark Age by Piers Brown. 5 stars. Spoken so much about this on my TikTok, and this was epic. This was exciting. This was a definite page turner. I was already like gasping and just shocked just in the prologue. In the prologue already I was just like, I can already tell that this is going to be a whirlwind of a ride, and Piers Brown didn't disappoint. So this is book 5 of the Red Rising series, and this is the second book in the new era of Red Rising, if I can call it that. And in the second era of Red Rising, the story is told from multiple perspectives. And one thing that I really enjoyed about that is the different voices and the different perspectives that Pierce Brown wrote in. The language he uses for each of these characters is very distinct, very different, and you can hear that the language and the way that they communicate speaks true to their background, their upbringing, and I really enjoyed that. I listened to the audiobook of this one as well on my Audible, loved every bit of it. And our main character obviously in this one is still Darrow, and this book is taking place so in book 4 we were 10 years past the war, so this is a continuation directly from book 4, and we find ourselves in this political disarray, and we've got all of these different factions that are trying to be the ruler of the society, and we've got so many different plots and warring happening all over the place. The story takes place mainly in 3 locations. It takes place on Mars, it takes place on Luna, which is the main capital where our senates are, and we've got a big chunk of the story taking place on Mercury, and this is where you see a lot of the action as well. But there's just a lot of moving parts in this one as well, and when you're reading this book, there's like no moment of rest. Every page is just either heartbreaking, or it will make your heart race, or it will just leave you in shock. Like, there was no moment of rest. It was just action after action after action. And obviously, as this being a 5th book in the story, I can't really talk too much on the plot of it because I don't want to spoil anybody from having to read this book and not having the same experience that I had. But if you guys have been on my channel for a while, you know now that Red Rising is literally like one of my favorite series of all time, if not the #1. At this point, I think it's my #1 favorite series of all time. I will probably keep reading and rereading the series over and over again. I already read Red Rising book 1 twice. I am on my second reread of Golden Sun, which is book 2. Because Katleho is reading it and I'm refreshing my mind so that when she comes to me with questions, and then I'm like, I'll be quick on it, you know what I mean? Book 3 I read once. Book 4 I read 2.5 times because I read the first time and I felt that I rushed through it. The second time around, when I was reading it, I realized that I was still rushing through it, so I stopped. And then I restarted again. Like, that's how obsessed I am with the story, with the series. I don't mind going back to it because, you know, when you have this surety of when I go into the story, it's going to be fire, it's going to be epic, it's going to be amazing, I'm going to have a great time. That's what I know going into the story. And yeah, this one obviously was my first time reading it, and I want to pick up Lightbringer very soon so that I don't forget what's happening in here. So I'm excited for Lightbringer, but I'm also a little bit scared because Pierce Brown killed a lot of characters in this book, characters that we have gotten to know over the years, you know, over the books, and I was just like, that's something like my heart did not rest. My heart did not rest when I read this book, but I absolutely enjoyed it, and I understand why it's called Dark Age, because it was Dark Age. And I was just very shocked about a lot of things that happened in this book, and I just don't know how we come back from it. And I don't know where Pierce Brown is going with the story, but a part of me doesn't want it to end because a part of me is scared of what would happen when it ends. I feel like the world would end. The world would end. I don't know how we can be in a place where we find peace in the story, in this era, in this plot. I just don't know. And like I said, there's multiple plots happening within the story, and each one I felt like he took the time to really build on it, and I'm just interested in how everything is going to play out. And the change in the story and the plot, it happens so quickly, so swiftly, that you just like, hold on what now? But yeah, absolutely loved it. You guys know that I'm always recommending this story. This is a sci-fi, by the way, And if you're somebody who's scared of sci-fi, haven't really dabbled into it, this one is the best one to start with, I feel. From book one, it doesn't even feel like very sci-fi. It feels, I think, a little bit more fantasy-like, but we don't have people with magical abilities at all. We just have humans who have advanced themselves to a point where they are stronger. They have certain features that could put them in a specific caste system. So the caste system in the story is based on different colors, and if you are a red, you will have red hair, you will have red eyes. For example, if you're gold, you will have gold hair, you will have gold eyes. So the defining features are in your physical appearance, and reds are usually like more quote-unquote normal human size, so they are technically smaller, and the golds are bigger. You know, the obsidians are even larger than the golds. So humans have genetically modified themselves to be able to fit in these different caste systems to create the society. This is basically where I guess also the scientific fantastical element will come from, but there's no magical abilities. This is all just war and fights and just sword play and guns and spaceships and everything. But like I'm saying, it's an easy one to get into if you're not familiar with sci-fi, if you're very uncomfortable with it. Book one doesn't really delve too much into the sci-fi. I feel like you are getting to build on the characters more, on the world, on the politics, and only really in book two do they introduce things like spaceships. So I feel like it eases you into the sci-fi elements of it. As the stories progresses, you get a bit more of the space fights and all that, but it's so cool. The story is so cool, man. It's so cool. I absolutely love it. And yeah, 5 stars, read it, enjoy it, come back and chat to me about it. Next up, I read horror called A House with Good Bones by T.K. Fisher. Put the book up here. I give this one a 3.5 star rating. I did not know what to expect, but I know that T.K. Fisher writes a lot of gothic horror, and if I have to ever dabble into horror, gothic horror will be one that I'm most comfortable in. And in this one, we're following a woman who recently had a cancellation on her work trip, and she decides to go and stay with her mother for a bit, and the mother is staying in her grandmother's house who passed away, so her mom has inherited this. But as soon as she arrives, it's just like, something's not okay with my mom. You know, she is like very skinny, like she looks frail, and she's trying to like figure out what is going on. And as she's there at the house, she's starting to see like weird things happening. So in her career, she studies insects, so she knows insects, and she realizes something, that in this house, like, her mom grows roses in the backyard, and her grandmother also used to grow the roses, but she was very like particular and very pedantic about her roses. And it's like, don't touch my roses, you only touch them if I, you know, tell you to touch them. So every day she would like pick a few roses, put them in the house, and this main character realizes that, why is this house so quiet? Like, it's so quiet, there's no insect sounds, there's nothing. But then when she looks at the neighbors, they've got insects. So it's just like, this is very weird for her, and especially for somebody who studies insects, she's just like, this is not adding up. But the more that she stays in the house, the more things start getting weird in the house, and it's just like, it's just creepy. It's creepy, it just keeps getting creepier and creepier and creepier. But I couldn't stop listening. And I just wanted to know what's gonna happen. And yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars. I think it was a good read, but when I got to the end, I think it kind of lost me a little bit. And I guess it's horror, so it's also paranormal, right? But it kind of lost me a little bit with that, and I found myself just like, okay, let the story finish. It's okay. I've got the kind of like the crux of it. But yeah, it was an interesting one though to read. So yeah, gave that one 3.5 star rating. And then the final book that I read in the month of October is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch, which I gave 5 stars as well. absolutely love this one. This is a sci-fi as well, and I think it was Raymond who recommended this book to me and the story. So when he recommended to me, I first went and watched the TV series with my husband, which we got obsessed over. We got obsessed over it. Like, we love things like that. And we watched it, I think, in about 2 days or so, because it's about 10 episodes, if I'm not mistaken. And we absolutely enjoyed it. So in this book, we follow our main character, Jason, who lives with his wife, who used to be an artist, and their teenage son. And Jason is a scientist, but he had to give up his dreams of furthering his career to have a family. So he is now a lecturer. And one day, one of his friends invites him for like a celebratory drinks. And you know, his friend is celebrating this award that he got, and you know, he says to his friend, you know, you could have been the one, this award should have been for you, it should have been yours because you were so brilliant, you know. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I don't regret the choices that I made in my life. I love my family. And yeah, that was that. But as he comes back from this celebratory drinks session, he gets abducted and he gets drugged and put in this container. And when he wakes up to people going frantic over him in hazmat suits and calling him Dr. Jason, Dr. Jason. And he's like, I don't know these people, but they seem to know me. And they ask him weird questions like, so how was it? Tell us everything. Where have you been? What have you seen? And he's just very confused about what is going on. Like, why is he in this building with people wearing hazmat suits and testing him for radiation and things like that? And he finds out that his abductor is actually an alternate version of himself from an alternative reality. And let's call him Jason 2 for argument's sake. So Jason 1 is our main character, right? The one who was abducted. Jason 2 went and abducted Jason 1 after he had lived his life and built his career and became this successful billionaire, but still felt empty because of the choices he made to not have a family. And now he's regretting it. And he decided to abduct Jason 1, put him in his world because he's thinking, oh, well, you didn't get to see like your career flourish. So I'm giving you a chance to do that while I take over your family, essentially. And in this story, we follow Jason 2 essentially trying to find his way home. But the only way for him to find his way home is to use the same box that he was put in when he was abducted. But then he realizes that this box can take him to other alternative universes, and in each one, as he keeps searching and searching, is trying to find the right one he belongs in. And it's just this journey of him doing that. And he also realizes that the more he makes decisions, the more it affects where he ends up. And it's just a whirlwind of an adventure to try and figure out the right formula to get him back home. And the journey to it is just so interesting to read. And there's a point where you just want to laugh because of how things ended up. And it's a good time. It's a good time. This is another sci-fi / thriller. There's a bit of thriller in it. And it's just so good. It's also really, really short. And I think it's one that will also be quite easy for somebody who's not very familiar to sci-fi, but maybe is a seasoned fantasy reader. Easy to get into. It's a very quick one. I think Blake Crouch did a great job of writing the story. It's very intriguing. Like, it's a page turner as well. And like I'm saying, it's very short, so it gets to the point. We don't meander a lot. It gets to the point. You just move from one thing to another. And if I have to compare this to the TV series, 100% the same. 100% the same. As I kept reading it, I kept reliving my experience watching the show, and I'm like, this is so on point, on brand. Even the things that they were saying, even the conversations, they are just on point. And I'm like, this is what I want to see when you experience a book to TV adaptation. They did a great job, to a point where I've now started searching for other books by Blake Crouch, because I'm just like, I'm really interested. And also because of dark matter, and I know that Blake Crouch also wrote the Wayward series. Me and my husband started watching Wayward Pines last week. We are on season 2 of Wayward Pines because we really enjoyed it as well. I think I like Blake Crouch, and yeah, he's definitely becoming one of those that I'm just interested in. So my plan is that after we are done watching Wayward Pines, I'm actually going to get into the book series. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, this is all the books that I've read for the month of October. Let me know down below what you guys have recently read, what you've recently enjoyed. If you have any books that you would like to recommend to me based on what I've read today, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments down below, and let me know if you read any of these books that I have read, what your feelings were this point, at this juncture. If you're going to talk about the books that I've read, no need to hold back, no need to like hold back your spoils, because obviously I've read them. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and if you've made it this far in this video, leave me a snake emoji for Dark H by Piers Brown. And yeah, remember to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.